So today I want to get on and make some floating shelves for my living room. I recently purchased this slab of yew tree. I had the sawmill cut it down into 3 sections of similar lengths. I initially had the idea to do 3 shelves. Now I've gotten back and tried it out, I think 2 will actually work better. And that's good because since getting these home, unfortunately this piece has become damaged with a bit of a gouge in it. So I can't really use that one for what I wanted to. However, I've got another idea for it, so all is not lost. Right then, let's get making some shelves. So the first job was to set about removing the bark from the front. I used a chisel for this. I took it a little bit carefully as I didn't want to gouge the live edge of the wood and ruin it straight away. Then the slab was left with quite a few bandsaw cut marks. So I needed to use my planer on this. So I set the planer to the shallowest cut depth, connected up the extraction hose with my homemade connector, and set about passing a planer over the slab a few times just to get rid of the bandsaw marks. Now this is the first time I've used my cordless planer in any real anger, and I must say I was really happy with the finish it left. So I flipped the piece over and I set the cut depth to about 1.4mm I think it was, and made a few passes with that just to get the slab evened out in size and width. And then I just finished it up with my hand plane. Managed to get it nice and smooth and flat. Now I have ran into a little bit of a problem, nothing major. But I didn't check this at the start, but the shelf that I was using, one end is thicker than the other, and this end is thinner than the shelf that I've made for the other side of the room. So I'm going to use the shelf that originally had the damage in, and I'll have to clean it up with a chisel and use something to fix the hole. So then after marking up where I wanted to cut the shelf to get a nice square edge on the back, I laid down the track saw track, and using the workzone track saw I started cutting a flush edge. Now the problem you see here as the saw stops is because it bottoms out on the second track, and that is because they only provide 1 connecting bar, which is a really bad idea. They should give you 2. Anyway, with the back cut flush, I moved on to cutting it flush on the miter saw to get some nice square edges. Now this edge does have a slight little crack in it, and although you can see the wood fall apart here, the crack only extends on the top side about another 10mm, although it does extend along the bottom. Hopefully it should hold. So of course I cut the other side flush. Job was done. So this is the damaged bit right here. I've cleaned off the bark, so that's smooth right there. I think the best thing to do with this is just to clean it up with a chisel and try and get it smooth, get rid of these rough bits, and we'll go from there. So on this process I just used my chisel and some sandpaper to get it nice and flush and flat. So I've masked the area off around here where I don't want this epoxy to go on. I've sealed the front, so hopefully it shouldn't run down there. I'm going to use this Unibond repair epoxy. Sets in a minute. I've collected some dust out of the sander, which is this colour, so hopefully this works. I've never done this before, so it could go completely wrong, but let's give it a try. Now this is the second time this has happened to me, but I can assure you I'm going to take steps so this doesn't happen again. So I've removed the tape and this is what it looks like. I don't think it looks too bad at the minute. I think once we give it a sand down it should look a bit better, and we'll just have to see what it looks like then. So then I hit it with a sander, working my way up through the grits from 80 to 350 I think it was. and this left a really nice smooth finish, just what I was looking for. So when it came to sanding the front edge, I wanted to keep some of the colour and contrast of the original bark that would have been on here, so I just sanded off anything loose. With the epoxy resin, I just used some wet and dry paper on it. It's 600 grit, and I went over it small circular motions until I felt that it was smooth and flush and I couldn't get it any better. So after all that sanding, this is what I'm left with. I think the camera is actually making it look a little bit worse than what it actually is to the naked eye, because looking from my point of view, around here it's blended in quite well, but I can see on the camera that it's actually sticking out. What is sticking out and standing out like a sore thumb is where it's got these little air bubbles in it here and here. It's also collected the dirt in them from where I've been sanding it. So I think the next job now is to clean these out with a toothbrush and then just add a slight more dab of resin in here, and hopefully then I can sand it a bit more and get it clearer, and you won't see the air bubbles. I don't think adding some of the sawdust helped because it's made it cloudier rather than clear. Now I could move on to marking up where I wanted to drill the holes for the shelf bracket. I used a 13mm auger bit for this, and I put my speed square along flat with it. So I knew I was drilling a perfect 90-degree angle into the shelf. I drilled about halfway through, then I could remove the speed square and carry on drilling. The auger bit is marked with a pen, so I know how deep to drill in. Then I could just pop the old shelf bracket in and draw around the edges of that, ready to router out. So that they were nice square edges, I used my speed square and a ruler just to go over them. So as I mentioned, I used my router to remove the majority of the wood, and basically I just held my speed square flat against the wood tight and then butted up the router to it and just moved the speed square along ever so slightly each pass so that it stayed nice and straight. And then for the second cut I altered the depth to 13mm, and doing the same process again, I just went ahead and nibbled out the rest of that wood with the router. Of course the router leaves rounded over edges, so I got out the chisel and I just squared up those corners. And then removed any of debris that it might have left from the routing process. Then I could try out the bracket for fit. Perfect. And then the last thing to do really was just squirt with some white spirit to remove any of the dust or dirt or grime that may have collected on the shelf. Once it had dried, I went over with this Ronseal interior varnish. It has a diamond hard finish, so it should protect the shelf from any scratches. I used a foam brush to go over the shelf with the varnish. This is the first time I've used a foam brush for anything like this, and I actually thought it left quite a nice finish, to be honest. So next I had the shelf location marked up. I just wanted to draw a straight line to locate the brackets on. I offered the back of the bracket up and marked out the holes to drill. And then I just drilled those holes into my wall using a 6mm masonry bit. Now to secure the floating shelf brackets to the wall, I'm actually going to use these wall plugs, not the ones provided. You put these into the hole, they're 6mm, and then you crimp them in, and this unfolds up against the plasterboard and traps it against it. It's got little teeth on the ends here that bite into it from the other side. They're really good, they hold quite a lot of weight, and I recommend these. Then you just pop these wall plugs in and just give them a few taps with a hammer. Hopefully they go in straight. and then use this tool that I'm calling a crimping tool, and you just squeeze as tight as you can basically over the screw head, and they work great. So these are the brackets I'm going to use to secure the shelf to the wall. I quite like these brackets because just here they have two grub screws that you can adjust the angle of the bar. Should you have not drilled the hole straight, then you can just simply adjust it either side to get it to the level you want. I'm going to leave a link in the description box below to these in case you're interested in them. So all that is left to do is to slide the shelf into position. Look at them mighty fine nomadic features of that man. So there we go then, that is the shelf project finished. A little bit more involved than I wanted it to be, but sometimes that's just the way things go. You don't really see this repair here from the front on, which is the main angle you're going to be looking at it, is only when you get alongside the shelf you can see it. The only other idea I had to repair the shelf was the other one that I have out in the garage. I did think I could cut a length out of that and put it into here, but then you'd have an issue with the grain patterns not matching up. So with my limited knowledge and ability, I think this is the best that I could do. Unfortunately, the lighting in here isn't the greatest, so I think as it's a nice sunny day, I'll take these shelves outside and I'll leave some shots at the end of the video of them in the sun so you can just see how shiny and good the grain stands out. So if you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. By all means, give me a thumbs down if you didn't. Think about subscribing. Please share the video. And I'll see you again next week with another project.